In a sudden but remarkable shift, Muammar Gaddafi's forces said they were pulling back from the western city of Misurata, turning the fighting over to the tribes. But the bombardment continues. So, what is going on? Is there a looming military defeat for Gaddafi's troops? Is it a bluff or a redeployment to new fronts? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. Yes, we're taking a good look at the situation in Libya and in particular the key city of Misurata. Rebels have been under siege here for weeks now. Hundreds have died in street battles. Located in the west, it's become the most dramatic battleground in the Libyan uprising, which began back in February. But there's confusion. While Gaddafi forces announced to pull out from the city on Friday, they continue to bombard the city. Andrew Simmons has more.
Casualties in one of Misurata's most ferocious rounds of fighting. These are pro-Gaddafi men. They've been brought from the urban battlefront by opposition forces. Their lives have been spared, although for those trying to break the siege of this city, a contempt that takes no prompting.
These are militia of Muammer Gadaffi. These are want to kill us.
Some of the casualties are reported to have told opposition fighters that they have been ordered to retreat from their western positions. A series of opposition claims followed, even suggesting that Misurata had been liberated. That was premature, but they had moved forward, and many Gaddafi troops had withdrawn or hidden, and the opposition forces say they've cut off their escape route near to the western entrance to the city. This all came after one of Gaddafi's ministers appeared to announce a withdrawal of his main forces.
The situation in Misurata will be eased, will be dealt with by the tribes around Misurata and the rest of the Misurata's people, not by the Libyan army. And you will see how they will be swift and quick and fast, and the Libyan army will be out of the question.
But continuing barrages of long-range mortar fire punctuated with a full stop any suggestion that the Gaddafi forces had halted their onslaught. What the Deputy Foreign Minister had described as a surgical solution, which wasn't working because of NATO air cover, was still in place, with its indiscriminate targeting that has cost hundreds of civilian lives.
While the opposition forces have made real gains, they're now moving with uncharacteristic caution. Many believe the pro-Gaddafi forces could be preparing some sort of trap, while all the while keeping up the momentum with long-range mortar fire. Few believe Gaddafi can let go of this, Libya's third largest city. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Misurata.
So, what is Gaddafi's strategy for this key port, and what role will the tribes play? Joining us to discuss this today in Jeddah, Libyan author and historian Faraj Najem. In Dubai, we have Mohammed Ali Abdallah, the Deputy Secretary General of the National Front for Salvation in Libya. And from Beirut, Hesham Jaber, military analyst and a retired general from the Lebanese army. And General Jaber, I'd like to start with you, if I may, with your military background. From a strategic perspective, what do you think has happened here? Gaddafi loyalists have pulled back and repositioned, or is it some kind of bluff?
Yes, first of all, let me please clarify a very important point from the beginning. As everybody knows that the first week, the revolution forces did control most of the Libyan territory. And United States of America and other Western countries, they made a vocal, statement against the Libyan regime and to protect the civilians, so and so. And they didn't move and they didn't do anything.
Okay,
and within
General Jaber, I must just bring it up. We need to bring it forward to where we are now, because many weeks have passed, almost 2 months have passed since it all began. And where we are right now is that they've said, the Gaddafi forces have said that they would pull out of Misurata. It seems that they haven't, that they are now bombarding the city as we speak, perhaps. Why do you think this is the case? What do you think tactically Gaddafi is doing here?
Yeah, Gaddafi made another tactic now, and he said that his army will withdraw yesterday or the day before, will withdraw from Misurata. There is a real massacre in Misurata, and Misurata is under the state of siege, you know, for many weeks. Gaddafi want to make such bluff, like you said, you asked, and I think he said that the tribes will fight instead of his Kataib or his brigades, whatever you call them, in order to let the NATO forces not able to shell any forces, because they are there not to shell the civilians, or whether the civilians are from the side of Gaddafi or the side of the revolution. Now he pretends that the forces who are started to invade Misurata are tribes, and in fact, in reality, they are soldiers in civilian clothes, and supported by
let me bring in Faraj
mercenaries,
Najem.
you know,
Let me bring in Faraj Najem at this point. We'll get into the whole tribal issue in a moment or two, but it's true to say, Faraj, isn't it, that Gaddafi is unlikely to give up on Misurata easily. It is strategically very important to him, isn't it?
It is indeed. I mean, Gaddafi, what he's doing the three. He's bluffing, redeploying, but also he is trying to fight back the Misuratians. Misurata is a strategically important town because it lies between his hometown, the place where he was born and raised, Sirte, and Tripoli. But not to forget that Misurata is only about 200 kilometers away from Tripoli. So we're talking about a couple of hours ride from Tripoli. And if Misurata stays formidable and standing tall as it is doing right now, it's going to be a consternation for him and for his regime. So it's quite a tough.
Right. By that you mean that if Misurata falls, then that opens the way for Tripoli?
Well, yes. I mean that will link Tripoli with Sirte and much of the west, and then he will be left alone with the western mountain to clear the opposition from. But Misurata is proving to be very difficult. It's a psychological wall between him and his ambition of staying in power. But also it's a great booster morale for those opposition around the country, especially the east.
Mohammed Ali Abdallah, how do you read the situation? The funny thing is, I mean, when you look in from the outside, it seems incredible that Misurata has actually stood up to this onslaught for so long. As I say, it's been almost 2 months now. And Gaddafi is still having trouble getting in. In fact, it's working against him now.
Yeah, it is. And it's actually today is the 65th day of conflict in Misurata. And the resilience of the residents of Misurata, as well as others who have come to join forces with the residents of Misurata in order to hold steadfast against the mighty military arm of Gaddafi. It is a remarkable and very honorable achievement. The other thing is, I think Gaddafi's regime or Gaddafi's tactic is driven by 3 things here. One is it's a sign of defeat that he cannot recognize. He cannot acknowledge the fact that he's actually been defeated in Misurata, and they failed to be able to penetrate the city, and what small pockets of area that they were in, they've been pushed back out into the outskirts. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's also an attempt to plant some seeds of confusion, like was mentioned earlier, putting some civilian clothes forces in the city, trying to establish some level of confusion amongst the fighters themselves. And third, I think it's also to portray that as if this conflict is between 2 Libyan sides, different tribal associations and affiliations, which is not the fact. This is a struggle of the Libyan people from east to west, north and south, against a dictator and an outlaw who's trying to establish by force his rule on the land. So this is, I think, that's what's behind this tactic.
Okay, just tell us very briefly, Mohammed, if you will, just what it is that's given the people of Misurata such resolve, how they have managed to resist the onslaught.
Yeah, the youth of Misurata are the ones leading this onslaught, or this steadfast resilience and resistance in Misurata. They've mobilized themselves in an incredible amount of time. Within a few days, You have professors in universities, imams of the mosques, doctors in hospitals, young men who are in high school, and engineers, people from all walks of life that have come together and stood together in a very organized fashion. Misurata is one of the few cities in Libya that was able to mobilize quite quickly, and that, I think, has helped it hold steadfast for this long. There are multiple committees, there are logistical committees, there are even media and public relations committees that are in touch with the public media, which all of this is part of the battle. This is all part of the battle. It's not just about a military fight. And militarily speaking, I think they've outmaneuvered the Gaddafi forces with very clever tactics.
Let me put that to the military man, General Jaber. Do you think they have outmaneuvered the Gaddafi forces? Because it's incredible if they have, considering this is a bunch of youths just fighting, and they've never fought before, and they're fighting against experienced people.
Yes, we have to recognize that Gaddafi forces are much more, superior and qualified than the revolution. We have to recognize this. They are well trained, well equipped, and well organized. And the revolution forces, they don't have such weapons and firepower, and they are not equipped, and they are not well trained, and they are not organized. And if we have an advice to give to them, instead of taking, people, soldiers from the army of Gaddafi and put them under their command, they have to do the opposite and to give the command to the military defected forces from Gaddafi and to be under their command and their organization, because the army is well organized. Gaddafi is still, even the revolution is supported by the NATO and by all kind of sophisticated aircraft. They still have, the superiority until now, and they will stay for months if the battle will go and come like this. Like you said, your guest, Gaddafi is making a very clever tactics now, because he wants to stop the Air Force strikes, NATO Air Force strikes against his forces if they are in civilian clothes.
All right, General Jaber, we need to move on.
Those are tribes.
Okay, I'll bring you back in a moment or two, but I just want to get onto this tribal issue, because they did say, the Gaddafi people did say that they were bringing in the tribes to resolve the situation in Misurata. So let's have a look at that. Tribes historically playing an important role in Libya, of course. Now, as I say, the Deputy Foreign Minister insists they're simply giving tribal leaders a chance to negotiate a resolution to the siege. So, question is, who are these tribes? Well, Wafala is Libya's largest tribe, consisting of 52 sub-tribes, and they're estimated at around 1 million people. They have a long-standing rivalry with the people of Misurata. The Ziltan are close to the Wafala tribe, and they're found mainly in the western mountains between the Berber towns of Jeddah and Yefren and Kabal. Others include the Tahuna, the Bani Walad, and Tawaga. The question is, gentlemen, what influence will these tribes bring to bear if and when Gaddafi's troops leave Misurata? Faraj Najem, Gaddafi's Deputy Foreign Minister, says the tribes want to settle the conflict, and if they can't, 60,000 armed men from the tribes would move in and sort it out with guns. So Misurata better listen. Is that how you would see it too?
No, I think it's what the government, through their spokesman, is trying to do is to desperately plead for some of those tiny minority of tribal militias that have associated itself with the regime. They have vested interests. They know that if this regime is going to go down, is going to go under, they're going to go with him, and therefore they do not, by and large, represent their own tribes. Just a word about the tribes that you've mentioned. That Wafala is the biggest tribe. We don't really have any exact numbers. I myself did the research, and I spent almost 10 years studying the tribes in Libya, and we don't know the real numbers. I mean, the town of Bani Walid, which you've mentioned, which houses Wafala tribe, it has only 60,000 of them. And Zintan, by no means, it is not as big as Wafala. However, some parts of Wafala are living in Misurata, and I've been talking to Misuratans who have been resisting Gaddafi's security brigades, and some of these courageous men who are fighting back these murderers, brigade members, are from Wafala themselves. So it isn't really straightforward, black and white. It's a complicated issue. But Gaddafi, he's trying to play his maybe final card by pulling out this tribal genie and trying to help him in staying in power, because he's losing, and obviously I think Misurata has concluded it for him by defeating him.
Mohammed Ali Abdallah, some say that Gaddafi is trying to engender tribal warfare. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, he's trying very desperately to portray that, and as Dr. Faraj just mentioned, it's far from the reality. Well, when you look at the makeup of his forces, yeah, of course there are people from the different tribes that you mentioned who are fighting with him, but if you really looked in detail, I think you would find people from all walks of life in Libya fighting against Gaddafi, including the tribes that you mentioned. The leader of the Executive Council and the Transitional National Council, as well as 2 or 3 members of the Transitional National Council, are also members of Warfella tribe. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all of the Warfella tribe is in support of Gaddafi by far. You mentioned the numbers are roughly 1 million people. Bani Walid represents less than 10% of that. There are hundreds of thousands of people from that tribe in the cities of Benghazi, Jdabia, and Misurata and other cities who are standing with the people of Libya. The people of Bani Walid, of Zintan, of all these other cities that are besieged, they are not able to voice their opinion. They're not able to come to the streets and join the revolution, in a public manner because of the security brigades who are preventing them. And I think this is the reality. This is an uprising of all Libyan people from all walks of life, from all tribes against Gaddafi. Gaddafi cannot digest
so when the
that
Deputy
fact.
Foreign Minister, sorry to jump in, but when the Deputy Foreign Minister says that the tribes will go into Misurata and sort it out, that's just nonsense, is it? It's just not going to happen.
I mean, it can be described in ways we can't say on the air. So it is nonsense, and it has no grounds.
All right, I get the picture. General Jaber, listen, you were talking about NATO involvement and the US use of drones as well. To what degree do you think that is now going to make a difference? And how might it have influenced the current position in Misurata?
Yeah, it's very hard for the NATO to strike on Misurata when the 2 forces are very close to each other. They are fighting from street to street, from house to house. And that's what Gaddafi wants, and especially when he put them in civilian clothes and pretend those are tribes. This is, it's something we cannot discuss about it. But I think NATO forces did not know yet what are the military targets for them, because the political targets, it's not clear yet. If they want really, paralyze the Gaddafi forces, they should take Bab al-Aziziyah, which is the headquarters of the military forces of Gaddafi, as military target. We didn't hear much from day to day. From day to today, we hear that they did strike Bab al-Aziziyah, but it wasn't true at all. And as I said before, they could paralyze the air force of Gaddafi from the first week. Anyway, I think if Gaddafi would succeed to take over Misurata, that means he will succeed to stay a long time. He will cut, the road between Benghazi and Trablus. And the revolution forces, they have to look to other tactics. As we said, Gaddafi has some tribes with him, instead of what your respectable guest said. We learned that 2 tribes, big tribes, Gaddafi and Makarha, they are still in their mass, with Gaddafi, because
let me put these points to Faraj Najem. Faraj, everything that General Jaber has said there is interesting, isn't it? And do you think that's why, because of these implicit dangers if Gaddafi forces take over Misurata, that this could just go on and on and on and on? That's why the US has come back into the equation and started using drones. And do you think that the drones can be more effective than, say, they are on the Af-Pak border, on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan?
Well, I'm not a military man, so I don't really know the exact answer, but I think we need to think creatively of how to stop this man's murderous machine in killing people. I know for a fact that he will not overrun Misurata, because Misurata has enough men who are committed in defense of Misurata. However, he has shown that he is bent on inflicting as much damage as he could before he leaves. Another man, he is going, and he knows it inside out. but obviously he wants to cause as much damage and as much pain to those Libyans who have opposed him, who happen to be the majority. So the regime is desperate. So he's fighting for his survival. And we must remember that Misurata is at the doorstep of his headquarters, because Misurata, if Misurata breaks the siege, then Misuratans will be able to move on towards Tripoli.
Okay. So you think that what we're seeing from you think that what we're seeing from Gaddafi and his forces are the actions of a man who's beginning to realise that the game may just be up?
I think so. I think he realizes, because I mean, I don't want to blaspheme, but Gaddafi, he has got a consensus that even God doesn't have. I mean, everyone agrees on him that he has to leave. Whether Libyans or Arabs or Muslims or the world community. The man, he has very few friends, and maybe this is one of the mistakes that we have made by not offering him exit strategy or a ladder to climb down on. So he is surrounded. He's surrounded inside Libya, but also much of the outside world. So he has nowhere to go. But to surrender, which I don't think he would. So he will have to be pushed over the cliff. So he has to be liquidated physically.
So Mohammed Ali Abdallah, do you think we're approaching the end game, the finale of all this?
Yeah, I think that the behavior of Gaddafi is the behavior of someone who realizes that the game is over, but at the same time it's the behavior of someone who is in shock. And also someone who's seeking revenge, and his behavior is basically outright revenge right now. There is no specific tactic as far as someone who's trying to actually take over specific tactical or strategic locations. I think it's a matter of spite and revenge. The other thing that's very important to mention here is that the revolution started as based on demands of the Libyan people for freedoms and basic rights. This has been militarized by Gaddafi with the way that he's reacted to it. I think in order for it for the final push over the cliff, the revolution needs to come back also to its primary path in parallel while the military action is taking place to help push him, because otherwise there's an opportunity for this revolution to be hijacked. And I think this is something that's very important, and sometimes we overlook that. And this is very strategic crossroads that we are in right now. We cannot take our eyes off of the original intention of this revolution. Unfortunately, the military actions and the military developments on the ground sometimes overshadow the actual intentions of the revolution. But we have to look at that in a separate way.
Okay, General Jaber, how close do you think we are, perhaps from a military perspective, how close do you think we are to pushing, or the revolution is, I should say, to pushing Gaddafi over the cliff?
Let me comment, please, but Gaddafi doesn't believe at all that the game is over. I think Gaddafi in the second week of the revolution was able to go, capable to go, ready to go, and to leave, but not now. He's taken advantage from the conflict between the NATO countries, a dispute about if their mission is to withdraw the regime or not. As everybody knows, there is a dispute inside the NATO, and that political targets of this operation is not clear yet. Gaddafi has taken advantage of this. If you remember, many defections from the army and the political regime, political personalities in the regime were defected in the first and the second week. Now nobody is ready to leave Gaddafi. Gaddafi did take again the initiative, and he's, as we said, he's trying to gain time. And if you remember, 2 weeks ago, Italy and Germany did propose a solution to create a buffer zone and a ceasefire between the two forces. And what it means a partition of Libya, and Gaddafi is not stupid to take advantage of this. And at the end of the day, he will accept to be the governor of divided Libya instead of leaving the power and looking for a shelter where he must go. If you are in his place, you will do the same thing.
Okay, unfortunately we've run out of time. We could really take this on and chew this over some more, but we've run out of time. Time will tell what happens. Faraj Najem, Mohammed Ali Abdallah and Hesham Jaber, Thanks very much indeed for your perspectives, all your perspectives on this. And thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. If you'd like to get in touch, please do. Just email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. We welcome, of course, any suggestions. From me, Nick Clark, it's goodbye for now.